The research proposal is one of the most common and the most high-stakes writing assignments that you will encounter in your academic careers and beyond. This is a step that must be taken before an official research project can be launched. Your research proposal is essentially a pitch. You're asking for your reader support for this project, so you must be persuasive, engaging, and, most importantly, realistic. Your proposal should begin with an introductory paragraph. This is where you need to establish a sense of urgency for your project. Your reader already knows that you're asking for research support, however, so it's best to cut right to the chase, rather than dwelling too long on a hook. This section should, in fact, be written last. Each element of the introduction is essentially a preview of sections that you will develop later in the proposal, so you may want to wait until those sections have taken shape before you make any predictions. When you do write your introduction, it should look something like this. Start with a brief background of the study, and then lead directly into the research question or problem statement. This is a sentence or two in which you describe your research topic and explain why there is an urgent need for your project. Next, you want to provide evidence of the problem. How do you know that this is a problem at all? Or what makes you think that it is important to answer this research question? This section should be supported with a reference to one or more of the sources in your literature review. Your research question should come next, but they actually should not be in the form of a question at all. What is the most efficient way to deal with nuclear waste, for instance, becomes, I intend to investigate methods of dealing with nuclear waste in order to discover which is most efficient. Then, in a sentence or two, describe the method that you plan to use to answer your research questions. Don't dwell on this part too long, you'll flesh this out more later. Finally, your thesis comes in the form of a purpose statement, in which you drive home your reasons for conducting this research project. Who will benefit from the answers to your research questions? How will those answers be beneficial? Be careful not to fall into researcher bias here, in which you try to forecast an answer to your research questions. Instead, you must be able to show that the answers to your research questions are valuable, no matter what they turn out to be. The next section of your research proposal is the literature review. The Lit Review provides a background for the problem and has the added benefit of proving to your reader that you are well-versed enough on this topic to make a unique contribution. Take a look at this Lit Review from the preprint of an article which has been published in the Journal of Consumer Psychology. The article is called The IKEA Effect, When Labor Leads to Love. The Harvard business students who collaborated on this article were investigating why people tend to value things that they have built themselves above things that have come ready-made. The articles cited in this review must first affirm that people do value things they labor for above things that come easy by establishing that labor is central to people's well-being, productivity is an important goal for many people, and that deprivation of labor can have lasting psychological consequences. The Lit Review then surveys research that has tried to solve the problem, including studies that have established that people find their jobs to be their least pleasurable but their most rewarding activity, that there is a direct correlation between effort and value, and that this is true in psychotherapy, brainwashing, and the pursuit to become a nicer person. The next section is your methods section, which is sometimes called process or methodology. The methods section sets out to answer the following three questions. Where will you look for answers to your research questions? What exactly are you looking for? And how do you plan on evaluating the results? Take a look at this methodology from the Psychology Today article, The Data Says Don't Hug the Dog, by psychologist Stanley Coren. Coren sets out to determine whether dogs enjoy being hugged as much as we enjoy hugging them. To find that answer, Coren surveyed 250 photos from the internet of people hugging dogs. He looked only for pictures where the dog's face was clearly visible, and he eliminated situations where one might expect the dog's stress level to rise because of factors other than being hugged. Once he'd established where he was looking for his answers and what he was looking for, see the photo to the right, he established how he would evaluate the results. He created 3 categories and divided his photos into those in which the dog was showing signs of stress, the dog appeared to be relaxed, or the dog's expression was ambiguous or neutral. Similarly, a team of Canadian researchers set out in 2013 to determine whether breastfeeding can be definitively linked to higher IQ, as had been reported by several recent studies. Rather than conduct their own experiment to add to the pile, these researchers conducted a systematic review of existing literature. Their methods section first outlined which databases they would use in order to gather sources. Notice the variety of databases here. And they outlined their search strategy, which includes the keywords they typed into their search and the types of sources they chose to include. The authors then outlined which studies they chose to evaluate, including those which aimed at the question of breastfeeding, those which used reliable evaluation methods, and those which focused on healthy infants. They also outlined studies which they chose to eliminate, including those which included preterm or small babies, those which did not use reliable evaluation methods, and those which did not evaluate the baby's dietary patterns since birth. Finally, they graded these studies according to those which were considered good, that is, not complicated by confounding elements, fair, or those which might have included confounding elements but could have avoided being affected by them, and poor, those studies that had serious confounding elements which would have altered the study's results. Keep in mind that this study and the study about hugging dogs are both reflecting on research that has been done. That's why these methods sections are written in the past tense. Since you are writing a proposal, your research has not yet been done, so it should be written in the future tense. The conclusion of your research proposal is called your discussion. This is where you have your last chance to drive home the necessity of your research, so give this section a lot of attention. Most importantly, remember your reader. Your reader is someone from whom you are asking assistance. That could mean financial support, academic support, resources, and so forth. That reader is trained to seek out exciting new innovations and to identify possible risks. Your reader is probably not a specialist in your field, so beware of jargon, but he or she has seen enough research projects to determine whether yours is viable or even necessary. If your project has limitations, that is, if your sources carry biases that must be identified, or if the data available to you is either too large or too small to deal with completely, acknowledge those limitations and explain how your project can survive in spite of them. If you're suggesting, for instance, that an increase in digital screen time can give rise to behavior problems in elementary school children, you may have only the reports of teachers and parents to rely on. These reports may be biased by the opinions of the children's caregivers. Acknowledge this and suggest that the scope of your essay will focus on the adults' perceptions of the children's behaviors. Finally, emphasize the impact and the urgency of your project. End on an optimistic note by describing the potential impact of your study on the study's discipline and on others outside of the discipline. Once we have learned something from the scholarly review that you are proposing to undertake, how will your field change? Will it be operating under new beliefs? Will it engage new research projects? Will it utilize new processes and procedures? And beyond your field, what group or groups of people are most likely to be affected by the conversation you are proposing to review? How will those people be affected?
23rd.
This is the point at which you really want to drive home the urgency of the project so that your reader feels good about himself for supporting you.